How are you doing?
I'm doing great, JP. How about you?
Fantastic. Thrilled that you're here.
Yeah, I'm pleased to be here too.
Hi, Marcia. Welcome to the call as well.
Thank you.
Nice to
Hello.
see you.
Good to see you too.
And Phil, you've got a nice background. You've got the reimagined background there.
I do. That's the website. Yeah.
Looks good. So I'm thrilled that a couple of you saw my post on LinkedIn where I was already trying to dig in at these big questions I've got. And I guess I should wait for everybody to get here, but I'm too excited to talk about this. Okay, I should wait. There's more people that are going to join the next 2-3 minutes. Nicola's here as well. Hey, Nicola, welcome.
Hey, friends.
How are you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Very good, thank you.
Hi, Sally.
Hi, how's it going?
Good. You?
Great, thanks.
Looks like Brad is joining. Hey, Brad, can you hear us?
Yes.
Hey, welcome to the call.
Hey, thank you.
Great, thanks for being here. Hey, Brad, while people are joining in, I'm expecting to start in a couple of minutes while people slowly join in, but this might be a good chance for you to say hi to everyone if you want. I just thought you might tell them where you're based, who you help, who you're working with. I like to talk about different people that are using the challenge mindset. So would you mind?
Oh, yeah, not a bit. My name is Brad Minton. I'm a career coach at Eastern Michigan University right now, primarily working with exploratory students, so freshman, sophomore, but we run the whole gamut. So we'll work with the upperclassmen and the graduate students as well.
That's great. And you just made this great video for your students explaining the challenge mindset and debunking the job title mindset, which I think is great. That video that you made, I like it a lot, but I have a feeling you made it internal just for your students. But I'm asking because otherwise I'd like to show everybody on the call. Did I guess right?
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Okay, it's just internal. Okay, good. Well, you'll all have to take my word for it that he created a great video for his students internally. Welcome, Brad. Okay, hey, Marianne, nice to see you. Bonjour, Marie-France, bienvenue, welcome. Hello. And I always like sharing the deck that I'm going to use for the session. So I'm going to do that in the chat. We're going to use a new function in Zoom today that we haven't used before, but you probably have used before, called the poll section. So in a few minutes, I'm going to turn on the poll and you'll be able to answer some questions just to get the discussion flowing around the systems discussion that we've got going on. Hey, Emma, welcome to the call.
Thanks for having me. I'm happy to be here.
You look like you were on an interesting call before this. Anything fun?
I met with somebody who is an unconventional lawyer. To share a bit about myself, everyone, I work at Spark Path, but I'm also in law school, and he gave me advice on how to go against the crowd, be in law school, and not follow the traditional path.
Great. Are you sold?
Yes, I am sold. That's why I'm still working on Spark Path.
That's great. Hey, Michael, welcome. Glad you're here. Nice to see you. And Lucas, I didn't get a chance to say hi. Thanks for being here as well.
Thanks for doing this.
Hey, my pleasure. My pleasure. Okay, let's dive in. I've had the privilege of working with people who are so committed and passionate to their cause being helping young people thrive. I imagine everyone in this call has done that one-on-one, helping people thrive face to face. Maybe you have, maybe you haven't, but mostly I speak to people who do. And as you've progressed in your career, you've likely had opportunities to work not one-on-one with students, but on the system surrounding your career service practice, surrounding the organization you work in, surrounding the systems that your students are operating in. And as I'm writing the Challenge Mindset book, I felt myself torn. I'm torn because I'm so proud, I'm so excited of the transformational work that you do one-on-one with your students. You take them from a state of discouraged to encouraged. You take them from a state of being scared about their future to being excited about their future. And I think that that has exponential human value and exponential economic value. And that's actually what I'm writing the book about, is that educators are changing the system indirectly just by their work with students, and it's a beautiful thing, and I love it. At the same time, I think the system can often slow you down because it's not updated, it's not built the right way. And as I was diving into and thinking about these issues, I realized that that could be a huge drain on your energy and your resources. Okay, and by the way, I'll take a minute to define like what I mean by people development systems, but I just wanted to give you this context before we start. My mom, both my parents taught. My dad taught in elementary school for almost his entire career, and my mom taught in high school. She taught English in a francophone school, and she taught special ed. And my mom went through 2 burnouts. Burnouts were really difficult on her. She had to stop to work. They were hard on our family. I know that one of the reasons that she burnt out was because of the system she was operating in. So I know that it causes suffering at a certain sense. That's the context. In the book now, as I was writing, learning how to write, by the way, I think that's what I'm doing rather than writing, I'm learning how to write. I had a feeling where I wanted to tell you our systems are broken and they'll never be fixed. I had a feeling to say our systems were started off from where we were living in tribes and on the farm, where the people development systems that we had were all about our survival. And after we started leaving the farms and we transitioned to an industrial economy, an information economy, and the next economy we're going to transition to, our people development systems are no longer about survival. So they're much more complex. And since they're so complex, we can never hope to have a perfect, seamless, interconnected system that helps people thrive. So we have to accept in a state of a permanent imperfection for our systems. That's not to say we shouldn't work on it. And often you all are the best people to work on it. Like this idea, the challenge mindset, because it's innovative, it tends to attract change makers who have the skills, the capabilities, the motivation to work on the system. What I'm wondering is, what does this translate to your day-to-day, which is where I was going with you, Andrew, when you answered this question on LinkedIn. You've set out your vision for what career education will look like in your school. You need to operationalize it. You need to work on the system. But in the short term, you're also getting face time with students. So literally one of my questions is, how much time can you spend on each? And because we've got so many people with so many experiences on the call, I thought we would take a hybrid approach, quantitative, qualitative, to answer these questions. So I literally prepared polls that are provocative in nature, that want to put you in a box just so we can get the discussion going. And as soon as I show you the results, I'd love to have people's voices to explain and justify what I've said. So Sally and Emma, you've heard me think this through for the past month. How good of a job did I do to communicate what I'm struggling with and the type of help I'm looking for? How'd I do it?
I think you did a good job. I'm really looking forward to seeing everyone's reactions to all this. That's going to be the jewel.
Okay, great. I like it. I'm in big listening mode, but I should be clear. This is my ask and my need, and the benefit is that the entire challenge mindset community will hear from your point of view in the book. That's one benefit. But I think there's a much more immediate short-term benefit for you to have invested your time here is I think literally you have to make daily decisions about how you invest your time and energy. And it may be useful for you to hear from other change makers in other parts of the system, in higher ed, K-12, outside the system, in education. We've got some entrepreneurs on the call. I think it's going to be useful for you to hear their point of view, for you to make decisions about how you spend time and energy. That's my intent. Having said that, what are your initial questions, comments, reactions before we dive in? I think that means you're with me. I think that means you get it. And I did an okay enough job of explaining the context. Great. I'm expecting to be challenged though. I'm expecting to be challenged today, and I'm not worried about you guys not doing that. I know I can count on you for that. So that's the first thing I'll say. Chris, you're going to go. Jump in, Chris.
Not to be provocative, and I don't know how well you all know each other, so really, my apologies for being an interloper. I teach in a program called a Semester in Dialogue at Simon Fraser University in British Columbia. And not that I think it matters to your intention today, but I would challenge the idea that our systems aren't about survival. And that I see undergrads daily fretting more and more about the material impact of their studies. What grades am I going to get? How is this going to land on my transcript? What does that mean for my job and my ability to work later? And all these things that I'm sure you all know a lot more about than I do. But the topic that we teach is systems thinking and complexity. And I would say that the concept that I've come to really find helpful is the idea that a system can never be broken. A system is really good at doing something. That's why it's a system. Systems emerge. And so a really good question is, what's the disconnect between what the system is doing now and what we want the system to do? And how do we actually help that start to happen in a better way? For me, looking at the way that undergrads feel in the current pedagogies that are kind of dominant in the world, and how we teach and how we kind of invite their input, I would say that they're very much in survival mode a lot of the time. So there might be a disconnect between what we've come to believe education is about, but what it's actually still about.
That's really useful for me, Chris. So thank you for challenging that idea that's not about survival. I need to add more nuance to that language because there is an aspect of careers where you have to make money to survive and sustain yourself. And there's also like a day-to-day, like esteem and feeling and where you're at. So I love that. And I also think I need to look at the systems thinking definition of, I love what you said about it. It's a system, it cannot be broken. I need that type of language to explain the point I'm trying to make about our people development systems. Thank you for that, Chris. Okay, I want to share a couple more things before I launch our first poll. Oh, you know what? I was so excited to start. If you would be willing, would you be willing to share your name, your organization, and your city in the chat? Maybe the school that you work for as your organization. Even though we don't have the time to do an intro for all the participants here, that might be able to know, at least will give you a sense of who's on the call. And I'll let you do that in the chat. So thank you, Dante, for going first. You're in Victoria, BC. Appreciate you being here. And I'd love it if everyone could share that in the Zoom chat, who's here. Eugene, great to see you in California. Chris in BC as well. Marie-France, Saint-Jep, Saint-Laurent, welcome. Brad, we've heard from Eastern Michigan. Nicole, you're in Sudbury. Oh, hi, Danielle, I didn't see you. Nice to see you. Lucas. Marcia from Dufferin Peel. Oh, Marcia, you guys are doing great stuff in Dufferin Peel. Nicola, Andrew, Luce, Sudbury. Megan from Brock. Welcome, Megan. Monique from Peel. This is great. I love it. Oh, Jill. It's Jill. Jill asked Daniel Kershaw. That's great. Okay, I like it. And then the Krista's just joining us now. Okay, that gives you a sense of who's in the room. We've got representation from the US and Canada as per usual. Marianne from Phoenix, great to see you. Okay. Back to my screen. So The way I've structured the session today is that I want to ask you your point of view about the system, what's broken about the system. We'll talk about working on the system, and eventually we'll get to what you can control, influence, and can't control as an exercise of reflection for how you go about your craft. And ultimately, I'd love it if we got to this stage where we could summarize our conversation to advice to a new person that would be starting in your role, and they would have to decide how much time they spent on the system or working with the students. And I've already explained this part, is that I know I have the privilege of speaking to change makers who have these dual powering strengths. One, of doing transformational work with students. And then I know you also have the capabilities to work on the system, but how do you balance those two things? That's what I'd love to learn. So the first thing I'm going to ask you, and I'm going to use this language to use it in the book. I want to ask you, what would you like to be called? I just called you a change maker. Is that what you'd like to be called? I think you might have a different name or different ideas. So I'm going to launch a poll now. For those of you who are using Zoom polls for the first time, Sally, what would be the best way for them to answer the poll question?
So it should pop up on your screen, and if you don't see it right now, then at the very bottom, you'll have an option to click polls, and from there you can answer. And if you're having difficulty, just feel free to message me. I'm always happy to help.
So I'm kind of thinking we're going to get, thanks Sally for that. I think we're going to get options all over here, but I'd love for someone to give an example of why they've, or justification maybe, why did you choose that option? And to update you, maybe I shouldn't do this mid-poll, but why not, to update you on our conversation. The last time I brought up Dream Builder, which was the first idea I was excited about, some people challenged me to say, listen, we can't build dreams for students. We have to help them with their dreams. So Dream Builder morphed into Dream Enabler. Not the prettiest language I've ever used, but I think it gets to the heart of what we're trying to say. I like Illuminator, and then Sally told me it sounds like Illuminati, which I don't want to sound, that's not what I want to sound like. That sounds funny. Career Guide is really broad and has like a lot of action. It looks like for now, we're not getting great results for advisor. I'm going to give you another 15 seconds to do that, and then I'll press share to give you a chance to vote. I think we're at 87%, so that's really good voting. Okay, end poll, share results. Sally, can you give me a thumbs up or down if you see that? You can see that, great. Looks like Career Guides was a big one, and we had a comment in the chat about why. Anybody else want to weigh in here to say why they chose what they chose? And any others would like to make a suggestion for what you like to be called in the career work that you do?
Hi, JP. I chose Dream Builder. That really stood out to me. At first I was like, oh, no, we don't build dreams. But then I challenged myself and thought about what a young person would like to likely engage with. They may not see careers as something viable, especially with very vulnerable and marginalized young people. So I thought Dream Builder kind of encompassed like entrepreneurship in that spirit as well, and branched off into different industries. So I really like Dream Builder.
I like your answer because you looked at this differently, Trina. You answered a different question. I asked, what would you like to be called? And you said, what would students like for us to be called? And I kind of feel like your question might be more important. I think both are important, but I didn't think about it through that angle. What would students like to hear, to understand what you do? Did I get that right?
Yeah, oh yeah.
Yeah,
that's right, that's right.
Okay, thank you, that's great. Thank you for that. Anybody else? Dante and Carolyn said Illuminator, shining the light. I love that. I really love shining the light. I've got a soft spot for that one. And then Career Guide aligns with happenstance theory, chaos theory, constructivism, guiding. Yeah, that's a good word, isn't it? Too guiding. Lucas is struggling to give a label, but you like advocate. Advocate, that's a good one too.
I like the word dream builder, but I think I would prefer connector because I'm a liaison officer in my current institution. So I'm constantly connecting people in order to build dreams. So
Connector.
yeah,
Interesting.
like either connecting to a person or helping the student connect the dots to what they would want to start building their dream towards.
Connect the dots. Okay, you've given me some great ideas. I got to think about this more because I was planning on writing this label about 200 times across the book. So I feel like it's a hard thing to make a commitment to, but I'll have to do it. So you've given me some great things to think about. Let me see if there's anybody else in the chat. A lot of great comments for Illuminator. More reflective of my goal to be responsive, walking alongside. I don't know what the word is. Do you like, for walking alongside, Sherry, do you like advisor? Advisor, there's a power, though. You have more power than walking alongside, maybe.
Yeah, I feel like advisor implies giving advice, and I don't know that that's, but I don't have a good suggestion for a better word.
Okay. And guide is, can you walk side by side with someone when you're a guide, or you have to be in front of them?
That's a good question.
That's a good question.
I think you kind of do, like you're showing the way then.
Yeah. Okay, good. All right, I like it. Okay, so let me move on to what I wanted to share next, because this was a great side-by-side Monique says it possible, right? I like that. This is, I needed that, so thank you. And I actually, I don't know if you can see my screen, but I downloaded the results, so I need to think more about that. I like that. Okay, our people development systems, what did I mean by that? Well, the first chapter of the book has to do with all the different groups and institutions that set up young people for success. And eventually, essentially what I'm saying is that we are not setting up enough young people for success in their careers. And Phil Jarvis, you've taught me so much about this over the years in terms of shortcomings and why it's that way, the way that it is. And so I made a big bucket, right, of schools, higher education, parents, workplace training. That's what I mean by our people development systems. So that's what I mean when I say, you know, is the system broken or not, or should we fix the system? Those are some of that's the broad definition that I've got. So the next question I've got for you in our poll is actually a series of 4 questions. So I suggest we go through all 4, but if you've got questions or comments throughout, please feel free to share them as we go along. Maybe before we start, Lucas, how do we define success? Get a job I want, have skills I learned, not what I need to do to achieve my prayers and dreams. Just to clarify, Lucas, I guess, and to clarify, and also as like a way to do it quickly, I said we're not setting up enough young people to thrive, and I defined it by failure, meaning like forget the, I think you're thinking of like some very positive criteria. I'm thinking of the more negative criteria, young people who are not in education or workplace training, that are underemployed or unemployed. That's the definition I used. I kind of used like a not success. That's what I was focused on. Okay, so let me go to the next poll. And I just need to click launch second poll. This one's called What's Broken? And again, Sally, would you be willing to give me a thumbs up or thumbs down? Thumbs up, that means you see the second poll. So please take a moment to look at, I've got 4 questions. Again, I formulated them in a way to be provocative on purpose. And then I'd love to have your feedback on your answers once you're done voting.
Are we good to select more than one option, or do you just want us to narrow it down to the most important one, JP?
I really hope I let you select more than one, especially for what's broken. Can you try?
You most definitely did not.
Darn. You know what? Let's do, let's put me on the spot. Let's give me a lot of pressure right now. I'm going to try to fix that. Thanks, Nicola, for bringing my attention to that.
Yes, it was really hard to select one.
Oh my gosh, it must be.
JP, I was able to do the poll last time. It's Carolyn, but this time I'm not seeing a poll.
Okay. Well,
but it could be my tech.
Great. So why don't you give me a 60-second try to go and fix that? Because I want multiple selections for, especially for the first one. That was the point. But I'm going to need a moment to do that. So
Take your time.
Thank you. Who would like to be put on the spot in the meantime while I work on that? Nicola, do you want to share something exciting with the group?
Something exciting. I'm so excited to be here and meet all of you. That's actually truly exciting for me. To sit in a giant group of change makers all over North America is pretty phenomenal. I'm from the University of Guelph, career advisor, not an alignment title with me at all, more like a shit disturber, because I'm constantly trying to push the edges of the system in my department. Big fan of the career challenge mindset. I think if I can share an example, JP, would you like me to share an example of something I'm working on to help change the system? I face College of Arts students, and I spend a lot of time trying to create conversation and understand the unique needs of the liberal arts student in an interdisciplinary perspective of where they go in the work world, which is everywhere. So I'm building a website and embedding it right into the College of Arts. And I sold that by aligning myself with recruitment. So we're actually creating it from a user-face perspective of grade 9 right through to year 4, and trying to figure out what the right questions are to ask to get them to come to the site. So, how do I pick a job title? Career Challenge Mindset's the answer to that question, right? So the algorithms, hopefully in Google, help lead them to my space, the space within the College of Arts site, to support that. So there's something to share. Did I buy you enough time?
That was terrific. That was really good. Well done. I'm so close too. I think it's just that I can't edit it because we started the meeting. That's what it looks like. I'm going to give it one more try, and thank you everyone for your patience.
Yeah, JP, it seems like it's a pre-event type of option,
yeah.
Fortunately.
I wonder if I can just capture, like I've got all of these on a slide right here. I could easily ask people to vote this way. And I wonder if you have the power to edit. If I gave you all the power to edit, if you wanted, like in a workshop, Andrew, have you ever?
Just annotate. If we go into annotate, we could all choose a star or a symbol or something and stamp what we like.
So can you show us, Nicola? Because now everyone has the power to comment, like, because that could be pretty neat if you just, oh, did you make your own? How did you do that, Nicola?
So if you go to the top of the page under view options and click annotate, it's the third last from the bottom, it's in the middle, annotate, and it'll bring you up a little menu. And you
I can't, sorry, I missed it. Oh, is that a Zoom? No. Can you tell me again?
I can, yeah. So on my viewer screen, you might have a different view. At the top of my screen, there is your viewing JP's screen in green, and beside it, it says view options. And if I open that menu, I can select annotate. It brings up a little menu. And if I select stamps, I have a selection of stamps, hearts, X's, check boxes. So then I can actually, I'll do it again. Yeah, there's some, Shari's got it now. And you can actually clear it all with the eraser.
Okay, so Liz has got it, Sherry. Wow, Nicola, you saved the day. Thank you.
Pleasure.
And okay, good. I'm really glad you guys told me, because you have to select more than one thing that's broken, obviously. Okay, so we're gonna do this one manually with a lot of beautiful colors. And the thing is, you really should have as many votes as you want. Please don't vote for the same thing twice. But if you could have multiple votes, that all I'll do is I'll take a screenshot, and that'll give me some numbers and idea at the end. And you might have guessed that the next question I'm going to ask you is what else is broken. I tried to come up with a list of some things that I'm going to at least talk about in the book. But I'm sure you're going to add other examples of things that I missed that weren't on my radar, which is great. So Marie-France, you don't have the links to the Google Doc. Danielle, you're going to have that. Marie-France, access to editing the document. Yeah, you can use it in Zoom, Marie-France, if you want to do it the same way that Nicola did. She used it with Zoom. But if you would like, you could also just write it in the chat, what you think is broken. So I'll give you another 5 seconds, but it looks like we've got an early leader here for top result. Are you all surprised that that came out first, or is that what you would expected other people to vote for?
It was refreshing to see that actually listed, because I think that gets overlooked a lot. When people are trying to have their basic needs met, or their parents are just trying to, do it, like to be able to go on a job shadow. I did a poverty simulation one time, and I got that question asked, did you take your kids on a college tour? During the stimulation, it kind of hit me in the face, because I was in the simulation, was a single mom with 2 kids trying to make my ends meet. And I didn't have the capacity to be worried about my kids' college stuff. So I love that that was listed, because I think that's a huge factor for our community.
Yeah, I care about that one a lot. So I'm glad you brought that up, Krista. And it feels like we're talking more about it. I mean, people are talking about equity more than I've ever heard them. So it's a really an important one. Brad added that as well. Nicole, you voted through the chat. Phil, your comment is the system isn't about preparing students for life. It's about preparing them for more education. So here's what I want to do next. Let's use, Phil, your comment to transition, because on my next slide, I wanted to ask you what else is broken about the system. And if you don't mind, can you take a screenshot of that, Sally? Because I don't want to lose it in case I do something silly here.
I already did.
You did. Yeah. You work with, you have a silly coworker. That's why. Okay, so if I, you don't mind, Phil, like if I populate this box, like what else is broken? I kind of feel like this is another idea. The system isn't about preparing students for life. It's about preparing them for more education. Would others be willing to share what else is broken, either in the chat or in this slide? And then Phil, would you be willing to tell us a bit more? Like I've read a lot of your articles, so I have a sense of what this means, but would you be willing to share more?
Sure, I'd be pleased to. Do you want that now, or do you want that after people?
That would be great. That would be great.
I started off my career many years ago building career information systems that ultimately went to most schools in Canada and a great many in the United States as well. Choices was one of them. The Real Game was another. And I thought it was about helping students decide what they're going to be when they grow up. But I really believe now, after all these years, that the whole enterprise of school, that career shouldn't be on the periphery. The whole enterprise of school should be helping kids understand who they are now and become authentically aware of themselves and the issues that they truly care about. So that's the challenge mindset. And I really think we need to mobilize all young minds to decide who they are and how they want to make the world better in their own way. And then structure education around project-based, community-based, personalized, experiential learning experiences to take on real challenges. I like the UN Sustainable Development Goals, 17 of them, and all their targets, because frankly, they apply to situations in every community, however big, small, in the United States and Canada, and every community has issues that need to be resolved. And why wait till kids, we crown kids after they're 24 or 25 and say, now go out and change the world, when they haven't even been thinking about the world or their role in changing it. They've been doing the next exam or doing the next assignment or whatever. So I think collaborative, project-based learning is the key around the challenges that this world faces. And I think if we get those young brains and they do. They care deeply about the climate. They care deeply about homeless pets. They care deeply about plastics in the ocean. They care deeply, but they don't care deeply about the curriculum in most cases. In fact, they go through the whole system asking, why do I need to learn this? And how does this connect with my dreams? So I really believe that our task as career specialists is really to help choreograph a change in the system. And I know that's not an easy task, but I don't think the system is broken. It works well. In fact, it won't change. You can't unbreak it because there's so many things in place to keep it the way it is. It just takes incredibly courageous counselors and teachers who think beyond the box that they've been put in and really connect authentically with kids and their dreams and their aspirations and their skills and what makes them different and how they want to make the world different. So there are exciting things happening in education, but it can't be just tinkering around the edges because, we have an engagement rate of 34% throughout most of the US and Canada by the time kids get to grade 10, 11, or 12. 34% are intellectually and emotionally engaged in education. That's the curriculum. They may love the drama club. They may be very involved in students' council. They may love the football team. But in terms of what we're actually teaching them, but they're not necessarily learning, that's where we're missing the boat. So to me, I think the whole focus has to be directly on these amazing, brilliant geniuses of kids and stop boring them or confusing them or stressing them and just help them grow. That's why I chose the guide because, and I don't think they have to be walking in front. I think they can be walking beside, behind, showing up when they're needed, whatever. And I think that's the role of the career specialist. But the whole education system should be doing what we passionately believe all kids need.
I love what you said. Sometimes I wonder, why am I writing a book? I should just read the book that Phil's going to write.
I'm working on it.
It's going to save me a lot of time. Yeah, that's such a great explanation. I've got a lot of follow-up questions, but I'm going to let Andrew go first, and then whoever else, feel free to raise your hand or just jump in.
So I guess this is as much a question to Phil as a comment. One of the pushbacks that, and I should say my role, I'm a guidance counselor at a very small independent school. So I have a lot of flexibility and nimbleness to do things that I want in this area that my peers who are in larger systems don't necessarily have. So I count myself privileged in that regard. But even in my small independent school, I'm working through a curriculum. I have parents who are pushing for their children to accomplish certain goals. So there's this idea that, if we stretched or pushed the system or did something that was more project-based, experiential, targeted to the desires and passions and goals and dreams and challenges that our students want to pursue, we still run up into parents who are like, what is this going to get them in life? How does this prepare them? What gets them to the next step? And I am sure that the people on here who are in the higher ed sphere see the same thing. It's trickling down from higher ed or it's trickling up from us to this whole focus of ultimately like vocationally and to that point of uncooperative parents. So I guess I'm wondering what the group thinks about, sure, we all want to be change makers. We want to do something different. We want to push the boundaries. But ultimately we run up against other stakeholders, the society that we have at large, that sells a very different message.
I will, if you don't mind, I'd like to, first of all, I think you're fortunate, Andrew, but your kids are very fortunate in the situation that you're in too. So lucky you and lucky them. And that's what I meant about the system will push back from every angle you can conceive of, from the unions to the bus drivers to the every parents, who want their kids to have the best marks so they can go to the best universities and come out with $50,000 or $60,000 debt and maybe not have a clue where they're going next, which is happening to so many young people. I think the difference is when you do make the education around kids, and this is happening in many places very successfully, and you can measure the difference. Marks go up, engagement goes up, kids' excitement goes up. Parents notice the difference when they come home and they're actually talking about what they are doing with their colleagues in school or on projects that affect their own community or Africa or wherever it might be. So I'm not saying it's easy, and what I'm talking about is moving a mountain that refuses to move. But I think we just have to, as I said in my response to JP, we just have to find more principals and superintendents and directors who have the courage to trust their teachers, to really know their students best and focus on those students and relax a little bit on the exams, because we know nobody is going to ever ask us our mark on anything after we leave the education system, but they'll know whether we have social emotional skills. They'll know whether we have a sense of purpose and excitement and hope and confidence about where we're going. They'll know that instantly. And that's what we all want in spouses, we want in our kids, we want in our society. And it's not necessarily in their curriculum, other than some words that get glossed over too quickly. Sorry about that. I didn't mean to make that long.
That's great. Thank you. Who's next? Go ahead, Nicola.
I'm mostly going to echo what Phil's been saying. I think one of the things that I focus on is skills. So we know when the student comes to me and says, and I'm higher ed, so it's about the launch now into the career, and they're worried about grades or grad school, because that's the new undergrad, is the graduate degree. And I have a conversation with them to educate them that employers aren't hiring you for grades and degrees. They're hiring you for skills. They're hiring you for subject matter expertise. They're hiring you for your character. They're hiring you for your ability to have self-awareness about all of those pieces and how that will help their needs. So I try to sell those pieces, and in Ontario, we're moving towards skills-based hiring. So I have a system that the government's pushing that I can help lean into that too, where I'm actually now seeing employers put postings up where I'm like, where's the credential? There's no credential here, right? So I'm able to use those as examples to say, here's where we're moving toward and why it's so important that you look at this aspect of yourself. What are the skills that you're using in your classroom that make you successful in your grades or help you to understand how you learn? Because continuous learning, an absolute thing in the employment world now. You're going to need it. You're going to need to market that. So you having an understanding of what you like to learn and how you like to learn, also a huge selling feature. So I'm with you, Phil.
Thank you, Nicola. I've asked you I've given you an example of what's broken, and I wanted you to resonate with that. You've given me more examples of what's broken that wasn't on my list. I've added that to the slide. Eventually, in this session that we've got together, we only have 10 or 15 more minutes together. I want to talk about, well, how do you decide how to take on these obstacles? How do you spend your time? And I've got 3 tiny little questions that these are the provocative ones in nature that say, well, how do you split your time? I want to do those now. They're very quick. And then we'll go right back to this discussion because I want you to react to that. So I'm going to launch the same poll that I did last time. So what you'll notice is that you're going to answer the question again, what's broken about our people development systems? And because you can only do one choice, can you just pick your top one, your favorite one? And then after that, you'll have 3 more questions that are just like a very easy yes, no, or partly, or a multiple choice. So that's what I've just launched next. And Sally, can you again tell me if successfully launched? Okay, good. And if people can't see the poll, just let us know. We'll help you find it. I was excited about your answers to all of these, but especially number 4. I'm thrilled looking at what you answered for this. And Andrew, I asked you this. Andrew, can you tell me in the chat? I can't wait to know what you picked. I can't wait to know what people said something else. I also know that the challenge mindset's used by a lot of leaders. So by definition, you at one point worked a lot of one-on-one your career. Now you lead a team of people who do that. So I'm expecting for some people to say 20/80 or something else, being 0 to 100, because that's just the stage that you're in your career now. So we've got 75% who have voted. I'm going to give you another 10 seconds, and then I'll share the results with everybody else. And share. Sally, you got that? Thank you. Great. So exposure bias. Oh, exposure bias came out almost as high as the first 2, which is great. And you can scroll down and see. The next question was, our people development systems are broken? Some said yes, some said partly. And I really like what Chris and Phil added in terms of, well, they're systems, they're working for themselves, right? Like, so the systems aren't broken. So I got to think more about that. And this is what I invited you today to say, is it your job to fix the system? We've got 1 no, we've got some yeses, we have, and most of the people said partly, 78%. And then how much time do you spend working with students? The majority of people said students and partly system. And there's 2 people that said something else. And just out of curiosity, would those people be willing to share, what is your something else? Is it 0, 100, 100, 0, or do you have a different framework for looking at this? I know you're only 2, so I don't want to force you to put on the spot. It's all about like whether or not you want to share, but it's up to you.
Sure, I'll share quick.
Great.
It's Chris here. Sorry, I was cam off for a little while, so I don't know if people can see me, but
we've got you.
It's a little bit of a quibble maybe, but just to say that you are the system and we are the system. The students are the system, we are the system. So when you're working with students, you are working with the system. How you work with the students, I think, does more or less, or has stronger or lesser impact on changing the system, depending on how you're working with the students in the system, in my opinion.
And do you get validation? Like, I think that the people who voted, I work 80% on students. The great work that you do on students, do you get external validation? Do you get internal validation and the credit for the huge impact that has on the long-term impacts of the system? Or do you all really need to work on the system to get that point validated? I don't even know if the word validation is the right one to use, but I'm looking to see about how you feel those rewards, right? Marie-France, you said you agree. Oh, sorry, did I miss Marie-France, which part do you agree with? Oh, what Chris said, probably. What Chris said, okay, great.
Too. Sorry to interject if it's okay.
Go ahead.
I think, for example, I chose for my most important one the environmental and personal factors that affect students, because if we're being honest, working with the students is the most important thing. It is about getting bums in seats, but at the same time, I think, for example, we had a question go out today where my manager had asked if we would like to take part in a mental health seminar or webinar, kind of like what we're doing tonight. And I think that is super important because that's a personal factor that has contributed to students either failing out or, like, I'm not sure what I'm trying to say here, but mental health is really important. And if we can provide those tools to the students and be a support to them, that in itself might be changing the system. And then, it would kind of, I guess, let us embrace it, as mental health is a touchy subject. I don't feel like there's enough being done in schools to support those students. For example, like my university is insolvent, and a lot of programs were cut, and that has affected mental health greatly. Or not, yeah, you know what I mean?
Yeah, and you know what you said earlier, working with students is the most important thing. I feel like that could have been my 5th question, and I would have said agree or disagree. Working with students is the most important thing. Yes, no, sort of, and I think we would have gotten a diversity of answers. Actually, some people might have said partly or maybe or no, which is, so I like that you added that. That's another thing I can ask people about. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew, by the way.
Danielle, do you want to go next?
I don't know if this is exactly in line with what you asked, but what's coming to mind for me is, as a career educator or coach, is having to navigate with a student or a client the reality of the systems they're dealing with. So, for instance, you know, somebody who's dealing with some kind of break, ageism, lack of Canadian experience, English language as a barrier. I mean, the list is endless. And I find myself, you know, endlessly angered that I even have to have the conversation with a woman who has taken, or a parent who has taken time off to be at home, about how to navigate their resume out in the world. And so I am constantly in this sort of battle between what I would wish to be able to help them with, which is just to be able to be themselves and be honest and own who they are and not have to worry about the implications of their reality, versus the systemic realities I know they are in fact facing, and trying to help them navigate those, you know, in a realistic fashion that in fact will help them. So for me, that's a big struggle. Does that make sense? I'm not sure if I've made sense.
Anyone? Yeah, to me it does. Anyone want to comment on that? Sherry called that hoop jumping. I like that expression. Okay, what I wanted to share next is an exercise that some of you will find quite useful to do either individually or as a team. I came across this exercise back when I was teaching leadership development in organizations. I think some of you know that my background's in industrial organizational psychology, so I got to do consulting and human resources training in all sorts of different sectors. And there was one session I did that was on change management that I find is particularly relevant to what we're talking about today. And again, this may be my bias of my lived experience with what I told you what my mother went through. But when I've shared this idea of balancing your energy versus with students or working on systems, it can bring a lot of relief for people who feel a tremendous amount of stress and pressure to fix it, fix the systems, and we know some of our students are going through very difficult things. So that's probably a big weight on your shoulders to think about everything you need to fix. So here's the exercise that I wanted to present to you, not in the spirit that you would do it today, but that you can take this back and potentially do this on your own, or to do this with your team. So I'll explain how it works so that you've got the instructions. The first step in this exercise is to present these 3 categories: the things in your work that you can control, the things that you can influence, and the things that you can't control. In a non-pandemic world, this is an exercise you could do in a group using Post-it notes, where you would literally write parts of a change initiative or a system or a task and responsibilities in the team's job, and you would place these Post-its onto different factors. For example, Danielle, since you've been working career services for a while, I'd be surprised if you wrote budget in the category of can't control, because you may have a couple of times or more influenced how your team has spent the budget. I don't know, maybe you'll tell me that's not true and it was a terrible idea, but I'm just thinking that's a possibility, right? Jill, I know you have. You've been, even though in your job description, you might not say, oh, I manage, you know, the entire team's budget. It's something you've been able to influence. So that would be one example of what you could put in your category. So the idea is to come up with as many things as possible to kind of see where they land. What are the things you can control, influence, or can't control? After you've done that, individually or in a group, can you challenge each other to move your post-its, to move your tasks to different columns. This is the biggest insight in the exercise, because some of you might push each other to say, you know what, this factor that you said you can't control, you might actually be able to influence. Or you know what, this factor that you can influence, this is actually something you can control if you go about it this way or that way. And the empowerment that typically comes from this is you realize, wow, there's way more in my power than I initially thought possible. So I'm sorry to give you the punch, the punchline of the exercise before you do it, but that's just the nature of this. We're not going to do it together. So you may want to do this with your teams. And if you want to make it fun, the last part of the exercise is that you take the column of things you can't control, and in a physical world, you take your Post-its, you rip them up, and you throw them into the air because you can't control it, which goes right back down to one of our themes for this webinar so far. You can probably find a fun virtual way of doing this, the part this can't control. So so I hope you found that exercise interesting and useful. And I'm going to throw a question to the group, and I know that Jill, you raised your hand, so I just want to ask this to the group first, and then I'll go to your question, Jill. Given what we've shared about the obstacles facing students, the obstacles we face in the system, what advice would you give a new person starting in your role about how they should balance their energy and time working with students or working on the system? I'd love to get your point of view as we start to get each other's final thoughts. And I'm going to put this question right in the chat in case that's a good place for you to follow up with what you had to say. But if I still have Jill here, yeah, Jill, did you have a point that you wanted to make from before? I'm sorry if I wasn't able to address it right away.
Oh, no, it's okay. I can jump in after this.
Okay, great. So back to the scenario. Liz, you're the first one to answer. Thank you. Number one is to be flexible. Do you mean have flexible expectations? I'd love to hear more.
I think because I'm a high school guidance counselor, I'm also a teacher. So just to be able to balance everything, and you try to do it all and help others. But we were talking about the system. There's certain things you have to do, but when a student or a colleague needs you, you just drop it and you help that person. So that's what I mean about being flexible, that you might have a list of things you need to do, but you just reevaluate, and and that's something administration always says that they appreciate about our role, that we're willing to be flexible with others.
That's great. Thank you, Liz. Anybody else want to add some advice? Got a couple here. Eugenie, do you want to go next?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's good to have a balance between the two. I have sort of a background in public health, and I think if you can have a greater impact if you work on a systemic level, but it gives meaning to it to actually work with individual people. I kind of struggle between wanting to work with individuals and see their individual needs, but I think you can have a greater impact at a system level, but it's I guess the question is how do you make those systemic changes? It seems challenging. So balancing it, I think, is good between the two.
It's hard to judge, right? With having a greater impact, what that means, what you prefer to work on. These are difficult decisions to make, but it's very aligned with the challenge mindset, by the way, where I want young people to think about that specifically. Where do you think you would enjoy? Which challenge would you enjoy working on? Balance that with which one would have a greater impact. So thanks for bringing that up. Let's go to yours, your comment, Jill, before we wrap up.
I just wanted to add, I think jumping off Danielle's comment, that it's almost like we have to work it from many different angles. And that's where I think systems mapping obviously comes in. I know Chris probably is thinking about some of these things too. But the whole idea of, kind of mapping out the system and seeing kind of where are possibilities or where are opportunities. So obviously that's all big level work. Like, we need to support these people who are, coming up against bias, different issues around biases, even within capitalism, right? But also I think we're good at working the individual level, but also just challenging ourselves even more to think about, social justice issues and the changes that we can make, especially collectively. So with students themselves, like individually, I think sometimes, when they're thinking about what's possible in the world, they tend to think at a very individual level. And, they're within the system that there's, a lot of power over and really hierarchical leadership and things like that. And just bias towards certain things. But they sort of forget that there's also a lot of power with. And that's something that I think that we can do better as a group is, even within departments, collaborating better, having students come together in community around these issues that they care about. So it's not just, you study sustainability and then that's your group, but like that, I agree, completely with a multidisciplinary perspective and just coming together in these places more where they can kind of share and come together around areas they care about. I think that's it. So yeah, helping them at the individual level overcome some of these barriers because they have to be able to participate, but also making sure that you've got that parallel stream where you're trying to work the system and identify, where are the opportunities.
That's great. Thank you. That's a great comment. And I'm just so impressed by all the insights that you've all brought forward today. You've really put your stamp on what I'm going to share about the challenge mindset. There needs to be more context around the systems that we operate in. And you gave me tons of great insights today, and I really appreciate that. I hope that was helpful for each other on the call. I'm really glad you joined. I like having an end time on time, so I'm gonna stay open if other people want to chat more informally after the time. But for now, I want to say a big thank you for everyone who participated before, during, and what you'll continue to add to this conversation. So thank you very much for coming. I appreciate you all having came here and contributed. Thank you.
Thank you, JP.
Thank you.
Thanks, JP.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, JP.
Thank you. See you next time. Thank you. I love there's a lot of comments in the chat to say that a few people pointed to additional resources, so I'll make sure to save that. And I wonder if there's a way I can share it more in the short term rather than wait for just the book, but I'll take a look through I think I'm going to listen to the webinar again, the recording, and then I'll look at the resources as well. That might be useful.
Yeah.
Danielle, were you surprised when your clone joined the call?
No, I love her, my clone.
Oh, good. That's good.
We do a lot of things together, so.
Okay, that's great.
I'd like thank you for this conversation, though. I'm so thankful to you for bringing this up because I don't think this is a conversation that's had in this world, of career development, even at all, or certainly not enough like this. So
Really
appreciate that.
I guess, Danielle, I get to meet with the most forward-looking groups,
yes,
so I have that bias. So I feel like it's happening all the time. So I'm really glad you say that because that gives me like a lot of context. It feels like, for example, a lot of I don't know if it's a US thing, but the language they use is DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion. So when we get on the phone with a US school, they're working on DEI. They might have DEI as part of their job titles. I don't know if it's as big in Canada. So I feel like people are interested in systems. Are you seeing the same thing, or it's slower than you would want it to be?
I think that's always a thing. Yes, I mean, same at SFU. There's EDI, it's called, right? Equity, diversity, and inclusion, right? But I think like Jill said, it's just when you're working with the people who are affected every day, and it cannot. This kind of stuff, systems can't change fast enough. So even just I can go to an employer panel and I'll listen to recruiters say that they're open to this, open to that, and then I live the reality of what people are actually going through looking for jobs. The constant discrepancy between the talk that's out there and what we still are living means that it's not happening fast enough. I know it's happening, but I'm impatient, so I guess.
I'm impatient too. We have that in common.
And I gotta say, I do feel like I know, Jill and I have many of these conversations about how to be subversively influential without, within the confines of what you're dealing with. But sometimes it does feel hugely frustrating that, you're up against systems that you feel you can't change. Like, you can change one person, the influence you have on one person or help some person navigate a system, but it's just, it's so huge that it's.
Yeah, the word I wrote down was surgical. It meant you don't work on the system because you're doing transformational work with students, except you do some small surgical interventions, and they are precise, they are thought through, they have a beginning and an end, and they have a high impact. Like I tried to come up with that idea, but I didn't bring it up today because it sounds like so many of you are doing more than surgical intervention. I might be wrong, but I'm getting the sense that I underestimated,
Maybe
how it's bigger than I felt. Yeah.
I think it's both. I think it's small and maybe it starts with one idea, and then that's where the systems mapping comes in, is you find other people who maybe there's some commonalities, and then you can maybe partner with them and pilot something, and then it becomes sort of something that emerges as an alternative to the system. So the system is working away the way it was designed to, benefiting the people that it was supposed to benefit, but you kind of are having something emerge out of it, and then that can possibly grow.
That makes sense to me.
I find that there is a bit of a disconnect between departments. Like, for example, we hear all the time that we're getting just-in-time information about academics putting out a program, and then we learn about it last, or maybe not last, but we're learning about it later. And then, I think that if we could bring people in institutions a bit more together to collaborate, like one big team day or something. We have our own separate team days in our departments, but we don't have like one large thing where people can contribute in a webinar like this. And maybe it's because we don't have time because everyone's working on different things, but I think that that might help.
That's a classic one, Nicole, in a higher ed institution, of like, departmentalized, compartmentalized silos, right? And not well, actually, to be fair, like it happens in companies too. But it's an important one, what you just said.
Thanks.
I think the thing is that it can be really frustrating to feel like a lot of your time. Jill and I, create workshops together, and really, when I think about it, we are trying to help people navigate systems that we don't actually agree with, right? But that's our job, right? To help them get jobs, survive, right? Find their way in these systems, all the while hating that they are dealing with these systems. So, and it's such a big thing of how do you, so when you talk about, I think we are making a huge impact, but sometimes I think, I can't change every element of the system that the people I help are dealing with.
Yeah.
And so every day I am stuck helping them trying to navigate what makes me so angry that they are having to navigate.
Yeah. I think that's what I need to put in the book, like an exaggeration of because the feeling of like, I have to fix it all, which is like, just listen to that. Like, just like you said now, like, I can't fix it all. Right. So let's realize that, let's focus on the students, and then you can work on some small surgical parts. I don't know. I don't have all of that balance yet. But Emma, I wanted to ask you, because you're studying one of the ultimate systems, the legal system. You're year one in, and I think you guys are already talking about, like, you're learning about the system, but you're already talking about how the system's broken right away, aren't you?
Yeah, it's interesting because I have both the perspective of like the Spark Path perspective, but then I also have the student perspective, right? And it's a lot of pressure to be doing exactly what everybody else is doing. And that conversation that I had right before was really interesting, because right before this call was really interesting because he was saying that you should be aware of the systemic flow that you're being pushed through. Like, be aware that these law firms are putting in millions and millions of dollars to recruit you, to get you into this one law firm, and then to go and continue down that path. Another really interesting quote that he gave was that law school gives you a menu of options, but with lots of delicious options, but there's only a few. So yeah, very interesting.
I guess my dream for you, which I've told you many times, is that you create your own meal or menu. Like no matter what you do, as long as you create your own. Are you guys getting hungry? Wait a second. What time is it? Okay, yes, it's time for dinner. Hey, Danielle number 2, Danielle Clone. No, I'm sorry, Jill. Nicole, I love your energy. I'm so glad you guys show up to these.
Thank you for
I
doing
love it.
them.
Thank you so much.
JP.
Can't wait to see you guys on the next one.
I can't wait to what you ultimately fall on as to what you're going to call us.
Oh yeah, well oh man, thanks for your patience. I didn't do what you and I did with anybody else. Like we had emails back and forth. You must have, what did you think when I brought up the poll again? You must have.
No, I think it's great. I mean, because
Okay.
the reason we go back and forth is because there is no good word. That's the problem, right? I loved, I got the Illuminati thing, so yeah, but I loved the Illuminator.
Yeah.
I thought that was really beautiful about shining a light and shining a light on who someone is, all of that. Like that was really beautiful. But I get every word has an issue. That's the problem. There's just no right word. But I love that you're trying. So I'm really excited to see what you ultimately fall upon.
Thank you. Thank you. Like I did this already years ago when I picked the word challenge. It was really hard. My wife said, I think I wanted to call it the problem cards. And my wife said, you're so negative. And she's like, it should be the opportunity cards. And I was like, oh, that's really a mouthful, So I chose challenge and I hope it worked, challenge cards, challenge mindset. But in present, I think it's like you have you say something and then you explain it, right? So in the book, like you explain it. So even when I present, I can say, well, these are problems, challenges, and opportunities. So whatever I pick, I'll get to fix in the next line,
You'll do great. We can't wait.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for coming.
Okay. Thank you so much, JP. We'll talk to you soon.
Talk to you soon. Take care. Bye.